Pokemon Unite tier list, the Greedent Patch. So, over the last couple of tier list videos I've done, I've kept the Pokemon that were unchanged in the same spot. I'd kind of gloss over them. I'd only talk about the Pokemon that were shifted around because of meta changes or patches. For this one, I want to start from the ground up. It's been a while. Let's talk about every Pokemon and where they stand in Pokemon Unite. If you enjoy the video, or if it helps out in any way, don't forget to leave a like. Really helps with the algorithm and YouTube and stuff. Comment down below and share this video with all your friends, everyone you know that plays Pokemon Unite. Get them in on the discussion, and that's pretty much it. So I want to start off with Slowbro at the bottom, and we're going to work our way up. Slowbro, still the worst Pokemon in the game. Buffing Amnesia does absolutely nothing for the character. All you have to do is ignore it. You ignore Slowbro, you don't waste any damage on it because you're just going to heal it up or shield it or Unite move or whatever. Just ignore Slowbro and then the game is fine. Worst case scenario, Slowbro makes it a 4v4. If Slowbro uses its Unite move on one of your teammates, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't burst through the shield and the buddy barrier and its health, so you're just wasting damage, and that's why people think Slowbro is good, because people play bad around it. The second Slowbro uses its Unite move, dive onto its carry, because it's a defender, not defending its team anymore. And also there's like a good chance that Slowbro just gets a bad selection and doesn't even take out like a priority target with the Slow Beam. And if Slowbro doesn't have a Unite move, it's pretty much not a Pokemon. So yeah, there's no value to this Pokemon, and that's where things are going to get interesting. So as you might notice, the tier maker, the person that made this list, hasn't updated with Greedent yet, so we're just going to use Clefable as a placeholder for Greedent. And honestly, Greedent is feeling bottom tier. But Verlisify, your video said it's giga broken and insane. Yeah, apparently that was only in practice tool, because when I actually got out into games, all of the problems with Greedent started becoming very apparent. You heal enemies with berries. From a game design perspective, like especially in MOBAs, being able to interact with your opponents in this kind of way is awful. It's kind of like how a Nivea wall just sets up the opportunities for you to grief your own teammates. It'd also be like if Mr. Mind Barrier stopped your allies from going through it. Like, all it does is harm you, and for the most part, you're a tank, you're a defender, you're running in trying to engage. So if you use Stuffed Cheeks, you're going to be throwing berries in front of you. Well, if you're facing an enemy Pokemon, you just throw berries at them. And it's not like there's a time until they can pick up the berries, they just instantly consume berries. So you're losing on passive, you're losing on ability cooldowns, and then the enemy is getting healed up. It doesn't make any sense. Also, Belch, you have to stand in place and then it takes a while to fire off. So Belch is like surprisingly very dodgeable, even though it's an insane amount of damage. And then all the other moves don't make any sense. Seed or Bullet Seed, you get knocked out of it if you're hit by a hindrance. So what are you, like, you have to like press the button again, it's super clunky, you run out of berries, and it just doesn't do a lot of damage. You land a full Bullet Seed on someone while picking up like 10 berries, and they don't get KO'd. At that point, you might as well just be running Sylveon. And Covet is just awful as well. It throws berries all over the place, so you have to like prioritize picking up a berry or maybe kind of sliding into an enemy. It messes up your Belch targeting. It's harder to land than like Garchomp Unite move. And like the knockup doesn't really matter. There's no damage behind it. It doesn't do anything. Really, the best thing about Greedent is the Unite move. Like, the Unite move into a Drednaw secure is huge. The Unite move into Zapdos damage is huge. Being able to spam Belches is pretty awesome. But again, like, if you just kite Greedent, it doesn't get the chance to use Belch damage. It doesn't get the chance to do anything. And as it's just kind of like sliding around, doing whatever, trying to like get off Belches and whatnot, it's still super clunky. So you just dive its team and then you kind of get to ignore it. Also, its laning is really bad. What makes Mamoswine so good is that tackle into Ice Shard is insane. Like, you just have so much crowd control, and you're getting tankier as the fight goes on, and it's kind of impossible to deal with. Even if you're playing Greedent or Squovet perfectly, where it's like, yo, I have all my berries, I go tackle, I get the reset, I pick up berries, I tackle again, I tackle again. You do like 3 tackles, and there's no damage there. It's just surprisingly no damage for actually expressing your skill cap, and there's not really any crowd control behind it, and even Covet Tackle doesn't make any sense. So, like, there's nothing to help you get through lane. There's a lot of inconsistency on your abilities. There's a chance you help out your enemies, because, like, if you just step on berries, like, it's just too easy to counterplay the Greedent, and maybe like support Greedent has some viability to where it's like, okay, what you do is you just throw berries at your teammates, but then why aren't you just playing Eldegoss or Blissey who can heal better, and there's not a chance like the berries get stolen or something, and they also have other abilities. Greedent, like if it uses Belch but it's giving berries to allies to heal them, you're not doing anything. So Greedent, I don't know. Maybe it's like C tier, maybe it's like B- tier. The potential is pretty insane, and it felt really good on paper, but when you get into real games, like the first impressions versus actually playing games is a completely different story. And maybe I just had bad teammates. Not even maybe, I absolutely had bad teammates, and maybe Greedent is very team focused, so it might be better in like 5s or with skilled players or something, but then you're going up against skilled players and then it's hard to use Greedent because you just walk out of the belch. But if you're just trying to play solo queue Greedent, you're going to have a very bad time. Also, Greedent doesn't really synergize with a lot of lanes because you don't have a lot of damage and you don't have a lot of crowd control. So there's just better defenders or even like supports. Like Mr. Mime gives a lot more pressure inside of lane and then scales into the late game really, really well. So I really can't justify like picking Greedent over other Pokemon, even in its best case scenario. And the downside is just way too insane on the Greedent. So yeah, after using all this time to talk about Greedent, let's start talking about some other Pokemon. I guess we'll just work our way up the tier list, and then we'll just kind of like, oh, what happened to Lucario? What's going on with Garchomp now? And we'll build up towards that. So everything else is pretty much the same. Absol, still pretty unimpressive. It's a complete RNG character. Do you get 5 lucky crits and win the level 5 gank and start to snowball from there? Or do you just fall flat and lose like a 2v3 or the counter jungle gank and then you're just never back in the game? Also, Absol just cannot teamfight. It has no place in teamfights, and if it doesn't get like the double crit execute, which is still like a 1 in 3 chance to crit, so like you have a 1 in 9 chance of actually like popping an enemy and then being successful in doing something, just play Talonflame. Like Talonflame is going to fly in and get all the damage that Absol wants on one target, but Talonflame gets it on multiple targets. So maybe Absol goes to B+ because of like how weird Rotom is. Like if Absol secures Rotom and then the bot side is trying to go for like a 4v4 or 4v5 Drednaw because the game's kind of weird now and Rotom got so buffed, and Absol becomes like an unstoppable split pusher in the 1v2, maybe it goes to B+ tier. But even then, like Talonflame just does what Absol does, but better. And it doesn't help that they are both speedsters, so they're competing for the same role, so you really can't justify Absol over the Talonflame. Like, Absol, slightly better early game, but then drops off a cliff. Talonflame eventually gets to fly, steals a kill, gets comeback experience, and that's fine. So, that's the state of that. Wigglytuff, still B tier, only good against bad players, don't into it, don't run into the cute charm. Play around it. And like if you're playing Crustle, auto attack Wigglytuff first and then use X-Scissor. Don't get your abilities canceled immediately into the Wigglytuff. It just kind of does like that Slowbro thing to where it runs in and it's a little bit disruptive, but then you ignore it and you completely wipe out its team. It doesn't play enough hard defense. It also doesn't really have like, and the damage can be threatening, but it just doesn't do enough when like all these other crazy Pokemon are busted. But there have been some nerfs, so we'll see how that tunes some Pokemon down. Charizard, still just an absolute suffering of a Pokemon. Like, lane Charmander is very, very rough. Charizard still has an incredible Unite move that, like, changes teamfights and changes games, but it comes online too late. If you're throwing Charizard in jungle, you're doing it wrong because Cinderace, Zeraora, Lucario, or Talonflame are just way better in the jungle, so you're running, like, a mid-tier jungle and just giving up better options to maybe get Charizard to scale. And it's only good once Unite move is up, so still kind of a struggle suffer of a Pokemon. After that, let's go to B+ tier. Pikachu's B+. Electro Ball, I think that's kind of what Pikachu still wants to run because the execute damage on enemies in a gank, on Drednaw or Zapdos is still pretty big. So you want to do that. So like Pikachu getting buffed elsewhere doesn't change anything. And now maybe there's a decision between Volt Tackle and Thunderbolt, but Pikachu doesn't have the defensive stats to get the most out of Volt Tackle, and the damage buff doesn't seem to be significant enough. So Pikachu is just the same. And Pikachu's early game didn't get buffed, so it doesn't have like the oppressive ability to win lane and scale harder. Didn't get any stat buffs, didn't get much scaling buffs. Like, Pikachu's still Pikachu after the buffs. It's kind of unfortunate. I don't know why the devs thought that Zeraora didn't need any more nerfs. Lucario barely gets touched, and then like Pikachu doesn't even get buffed into A tier or something like that. I have no idea. Venusaur, B+ tier. I've been floating around on the Venusaur, like, here's what I say, because everyone gets so butt mad about Venusaur being a bad Pokemon. It's one of the best Pokemon when ahead, but it doesn't get ahead of, like, it doesn't get ahead if the opponents don't let it get ahead. Problem is, there's just a lot of trash players in Pokemon Unite. Don't dive a Bulbasaur. Don't dive an Ivysaur under goal and give it a kill or a double kill. You ignore it, you steal its camps, you choke it out, you delay its evolutions, and then Venusaur doesn't get to scale. You let it KO you, and then it steals your camps, and now it's ahead. Yeah, you can't do anything about Venusaur at that point, and it does do the most with the lead, but it's not difficult to just not give Venusaur the lead. And like with most Pokemon in the game, don't int into Venusaur and you're going to be fine. But people just struggle with that, and then Venusaur's 2 levels up on everyone, and now it's out of control, and now it's going to become 3 levels up, and then it gets even more out of control. So yeah, just don't let that happen. And even though that is like a weird argument, like, yo, just don't feed, bro. Yo, just don't do that, bro. It sounds like a bad argument, but it's like realistically possible against Venusaur. So that's the thing. I had Venusaur in A- tier. The nerfs don't really seem that strong, but I mean, if it's like teetering A, B+ tier, then a nerf will put it down into B+ tier. And it's just one of those things where it's like, some days Venusaurs just do really well, other days every Venusaur is trash. So it doesn't have the reliability of other A+, and S tier Pokemon that are just always going to be ridiculous. Alright, A tier, I'm keeping Gengar here. Even though Gengar did get a buff for that Spell Vamp, I don't think it's, like, it doesn't matter super crazy amounts because Gengar still needs, like, burst people. And even if it's getting, like, 1 or 2 hexes off and then heals off of that, if the hex is getting canceled, it's not because Gengar is getting KO'd. It's going to be because of crowd control. It's going to be because of full heal. It's going to be because of flashes. So, like, Gengar isn't going to get more damage out of the Spell Vamp, and the survivability doesn't matter because Gengar is all about the hex damage. Maybe the Spell Vamp actually synergizes with the, Dream Eater Shadow Ball set. That's a troll set. Like, that doesn't work. It effectively becomes Absol at that point, where it's like you get maybe one person low or KO'd in a team fight, but then you're useless for the rest of it. You're untargetable for your Night move, but still doesn't do enough for you, and then the fight's still a 4v4 because you haven't, like, you did your thing, and now you don't get to do much else. I do think maybe there's viability to Dream Eater Shadow Ball or Hypnosis Shadow Ball, whatever the move is, on lane Gengar, but it takes so long to scale that, like, it's just a mess. So overall, if you can still, like, Sludge Bomb Hex on objectives and then get that right team fight in the mid to late game and then just, like, take Zapdos or take the fight and do a million damage, yeah, you can win games. Problem is, there's just a lot of other hyper-scaling, hyper-damage characters out there. Like, why pick Gengar, go Sludge Bomb Hex when Talonflame does that much damage in one fly? Like, Fly is like, I don't think the damage numbers are exactly like that, but Fly is like 1.5 or 2 boosted hexes, and then Talonflame still gets to get out, and then has like low cooldowns and mobility and shenanigans like that. So it does the burst, and then just finds a way to be better at it. But I still put Talonflame at A tier because it's super squishy, super exploitable. It needs to get ahead to be crazy, but when it's ahead, it's unstoppable. Still, like, it's a wacky Pokemon. Maybe bottom of A+, because there are games where it's just like, oh, it gets ahead and then there's 0 counterplay. Gengar still has counterplay because they baked in counterplay after the Gengar meta. After that, Eldegoss is still an A tier healer. I think Pollen Puff is the moveset over Leaf Tornado. Like, there's so much damage and so much wackiness happening in the game right now that you need as much spam healing as possible, especially with Unite moves, especially with your just regular shield ability. So you go Cotton Guard, Pollen Puff, get multiple uses, AoE healing and shields and healing, and then Unite move. It's nutty, it's wacky. It shuts down team fights, or at least it slows down your team dying, and that could be enough to just swing a fight. And it also, like, helps against burst, like Talonflame. It also helps your Talonflame burst even harder and then become harder to kill and then get away with a few more things. Eldegoss Venusaur is pretty nasty. Because, like, yeah, what are you going to do about that? Can't do anything. Don't feed it early game, and then you're going to be fine. So we got that going on. Snorlax, still A tier. Like, there's a weird synergy, like Greedent Snorlax lane, but Snorlax doesn't need Greedent berries because it just grabs a citrus berry, goes back to full health, grabs another citrus berry, goes back to full health, has shields and stuff under turret. Like, you're not going to push out the Snorlax. And then Snorlax also has rest. So Snorlax either dies to a gank or is unmovable. And it's still, like, Greedent doesn't change that. Also, Greedent is a very weak laner, as we talked about. And then Snorlax, it's just good. It's good for holding people down. It's good for disruption. There's so much other wackiness in the game. Snorlax just kind of chilling at A tier now because the meta has kind of evolved around it in that kind of weird way. I don't think the heavy slam damage nerf actually mattered. It just, the rest of the game's too crazy. But block is super strong, and it counters pretty much every Pokemon in the game. So Snorlax, definitely usable, but not like automatic, absurd, ridiculous, like A+ S tier Pokemon. Let's go Sylveon. Sylveon, still A tier. You gotta respect the damage. It can still melt you on the Hyper Voice. It can still be ridiculous. But once again, just don't feed it. Just don't into it. Don't let it get ahead, and you're gonna be okay. But also don't go, haha, it got nerfed. It's useless now. Nah. Sylveon is like B tier if you're running Mystical Fire. Stop using that. It's absolute trash. Hyper Voice, still really good. Calm Mind, still ridiculous. The Pokemon is strong. It's a strong Pokemon. Maybe the top of A tier. It's just not uncounterable double S, triple plus, insane tier anymore. But like, still good. It just can it just uses 2 Hyper Voices to one-shot you now instead of 1, and that's still very oppressive. Greninja, A tier, not that great. If you're thinking about picking Greninja and no one on your team has picked Cinderace, you're trolling by not picking Cinderace. There is like weird stuff, you know, Substitute Doll is just, or not Substitute Doll, just Double Team with like automatic water shurikens does hurt people, but doesn't really like do too much. It's not enough to KO someone, and then when you eventually give yourself away by not auto shurikening or like putting yourself in a weird position outside of your double teams, you just get collapsed on and die. So there's still like an argument for Smokescreen. I feel like it's 50-50. Might depend on the opponent's team comp, might depend on your team comp, but Greninja still wants to like hang back and be conservative, and a lot of people don't want to play that way, so Greninja underperforms. However, there's just like all-inners like Talonflame, Lucario, and Zeraora that just completely wreck face, so Greninja doesn't get to be proactive or as proactive as them. That's why he's only A tier. Gardevoir, I talk about this every time, very hit or miss Pokemon. Pretty much you need to get like the God tier Unite move at Zapdos, and then you just win the game for free after getting kicked on for like the last 8 minutes of the game. Sometimes it gets ahead, doesn't really happen. Maybe you get a Drednaw steal because Psyshock. Don't use Future Sight, it takes too long to wind up, very dodgeable. Even like in a Future Sight combo chain, it's not worth it. You need to be landing Psyshocks. However, the abilities are weird for Gardevoir, so you're not landing every ability. If you're landing every ability all the time, easy S tier Pokemon. But the inconsistency makes it A tier. The low, like the weak scaling and the weakness in the early to mid game makes it makes it B+ tier. So you just kind of maybe even B tier. Like, it's just bad. So it averages out to an A tier. And if you miss your Unite move, you're actually the worst Pokemon in the game. So very coin flippy, but has a lot of weight behind it. And Gardevoir mains, you pick it and you just do whatever. And sometimes you just win games because of it. Then we have Machamp. I think Machamp is still an A tier Pokemon. Not a lot of people are picking it because of like Lucario, Zeraora just having so much more priority over it, and Garchomp getting a buff. And makes me wonder, like, did Machamp ever need to get nerfed? The first balance patch was the cross chop nerf, and that might have just been too much for no reason because people didn't understand how to play around Machamp, or they haven't realized how broken the other Pokemon in the game were. Seems like very unnecessary nerfs, much like how Cramorant gets double nerfed and takes this long to nerf Lucario, not nerf Talonflame, actually buff it, and then not nerf Zeraora and actually buff it. But Cramorant gets a nerf and Machamp doesn't get touched up again. Weird stuff, but it uses its Unite move, and then it's like the best Pokemon in the game while using its Unite move. So that's pretty wacky. Has a lot of gank pressure in lane. It could be a good jungle, but there's just too many S tier jungles out there. So I mean, like, yeah, if you can make it succeed in lane, I feel like a lot of people forgot how to do that. It's good. You get picks, you run through people, you kind of just like tear it up in the back line and kind of create opportunities. Then your Night move is unstoppable and you just wreck people. I don't know. Got some shenanigans going on, but definitely like an A tier Pokemon. It can still be very successful. Blissey is still absurd. Infinity heal on the soft boiled, or being able to make Pokemon just like Giga shielded on the safeguard and then unstoppable is nasty. Bliss Assistance is good. Helping Hand is actually the best basic move in the game. And yeah, it just makes the game very hard to play for a lot of Pokemon. Mr. Mime, I consider Mr. Mime like, it's A tier. Pick it up, do good with it. If you're a Mr. Mime main, it's S tier, it's S+ tier. Mr. Mime mains turn into the best character in the game. But overall, like, people are just getting better on Mr. Mime. And even like just strong Mr. Mime plays, it's A+ tier. It goes Fake Out and it steals whatever it wants in lane. Fluffy Tail, Fake Out Mr. Mime is something I've been talking about since Pokemon Unite came out, and just like whenever you see it, your laning is over. It's going to steal everything from you. It's not going to let you play the game. It's going to bully you with stuns and way too much damage, and then you're behind and Mr. Mime's ahead, and that's never a good thing. And then better players just are even more disgusting with it. And then the Unite move shuts down the entire game, shuts down Drednaw, team fights, Zapdos is Mr. Mime's teams now, and you just lose. So, Mr. Mime, very strong at all stages of the game, and that's what makes it A+ tier. Cramorant, I talked about, keeps getting nerfed. It got nerfed from S tier to A+ tier. It was a successful nerf, still an incredibly, ridiculously strong and impressive Pokemon. Always pick Hurricane. If you're playing Air Slash, you're trolling, you suck at the game. If you're defending it, please stop. Don't do that. You're costing your team games. And no matter how much they buff Dive, Surf is just too good. You go Hurricane Surf, that's like 2 seconds of hindrance on AoE, so multiple people getting hit by it, and they lose over half their health. It's just too good. Like, nothing should be allowed to do that, but Cramorant gets it, and it's like, once you actually learn how to land Hurricane, it's super strong and it's ridiculous. And it feels like Cramorant did need the nerf, but not when everything else isn't getting nerfed, or other Pokemon are getting weird buffs and stuff. So yeah, Cramorant is a very, very strong Pokemon. Ninetales. Where did all the Ninetales mains go? Like, early on, Ninetales was S tier, and for a brief moment, it was like the best Pokemon in the game. It was just super reliable, crazy damage, crazy amounts of crowd control, just also supportive abilities on the Aurora Veil, and now it's like, people just stop playing Ninetales, and people just stop being good at Ninetales, and it's weird. So I feel like there's still a few S tier Ninetales mains maybe rolling around, but I haven't seen them. I don't know where they went. The Pokemon has a lot of potential, but something weird happened, and it just kind of fell off, but it's still like, it's sleeper. It's like sleeper A+ tier. Maybe it's an A tier Pokemon, but like sleeping in A+ or something. That's what we got for that. Blastoise. Did Blastoise actually get nerfed to A tier? Like, that Unite move cut and Hydro Pump cut was big, and Blastoises actually haven't been as bad to go up against in my games. And they also makes the mid-game weaker with the Hydro Pump damage nerf, so it's not like bullying or securing KOs. And then it uses its Unite move, and it's not like, oh, I'm dead now. It's like, still hurts, but we can come back from that. So yeah, maybe Blastoise actually got nerfed into A tier. Solid, but not ridiculous. Mamoswine is A+ tier when you go Icicle Crash High Horsepower. That is the only viable moveset. If you run anything else, again, you're trolling, you're throwing games, don't do it. But if you just like land Icicle Crash onto multiple members of the opponent's team, and then high horsepower, like that just guarantees the high horsepower. It's free. You roll people over, you crowd control 2 or 3 members in a clump fight for like 3 seconds, you win the team fight. That's whatever objective you want. It's also pretty good at securing or stealing Zapdos. Its Unite move is surprisingly underwhelming, but still usable. So yeah, just like everything about Mamoswine's ridiculous, and the early game. The early game of Mamoswine, like, when you're Swinub, when you're Piloswine, like, you just win lane. You bully people. Like, it's like Snorlax, to where you just stun them, and then you get to steal Center Apom, not Center Apom, Center Corphish or Audino. You might even get one of their Apom off of a weird Ice Shard, and then you can just bully them under their goal until they use all their berries, then your jungle gets KOs, or you just have so much pressure for Vespiquen. Like, the lane is yours. There's nothing you can do about it, for the most part. It's really hard to bully out or beat out a Swinub. So yeah, its early game is strong, even though it's a level 10 scaling Pokemon, it's just always there. And then it gets high horsepower Icicle Crash, and it's good until it evolves. It gets Drednaw, wins a team fight, evolves, and now it's pretty much unstoppable. So it's really good at shutting down the game, but can be a little clunky, can be a little inconsistent. Either way, we got that. Now, Lucario's the big question mark. Did Lucario attack nerf get nerfed into A+ tier? Probably, because everything about Lucario succeeds off of the attack. Also the Steadfast nerf. If anything, Steadfast nerf on its own drops Lucario to A+ tier. 30 seconds to 60 seconds means Lucario's actually punishable. It was always bad. Score Shield's the worst item in the game. Always has been. If you're running Score Shield early game scoring, you suck, and you're only beating worse players than you. So that means, like, you're only beating players that, like, Giga suck or something, but you're still bad for picking Score Shield and running it down. But now you're actually vulnerable. You know, if that Steadfast gets popped, you get ganked. Like, there's nothing you can do. Whereas with the 30 seconds, it was, hey, Steadfast is popped. Well, I need to take red and blue buff. All right, and then, you know, jungle rotates up, and then Lucario has his passive again. So with this, like, yeah, it's a weaker passive because of the attack nerf, since Steadfast scales off of attack, and then it also comes up a lot later. So there's just going to be team fights where Lucario would have had it pop off, become unkillable, and then just win the game by itself, or win that team fight by itself. But now, you blow that during lane, you blow that while like, that's another thing, like, as Drednaw is being, like, postured over, or as objectives are being postured over, you poke out the Steadfast shield, and now Lucario just doesn't do anything for a minute. So yeah, it's still really strong because Lucario is ridiculous, but it's not oppressive anymore. So yeah, I think that finally got Lucario kicked down to A+ tier. Should never have been running Power Punch. Power Punch has always been the worst option compared to Extreme Speed, even since the launch on Nintendo Switch. But now there's like a bug where Power Punch attack boost was scaling into the Unite move. That was stupid. So now that that doesn't exist, a bug, you know, Power Punch is still worse with that. But like, yeah, now Lucario isn't going to do stupid, nonsensical things because it's not bugged, has a weaker Steadfast, and is just weaker overall because of the attack nerf. And that makes it harder to secure with Meteor Mash, harder to win with Quick Attack, and then just doesn't get away with like Score Shield cheesing on bad players anymore. Okay, A+ tier. Garchomp, also A+ tier. And here's my thing about Garchomp. If you watch someone else's tier list, and they say that Garchomp is A+ tier, or S tier now, and they didn't have Garchomp ranked in A+, or S tier, they're frauds. They're bad at the game. Stop listening to them. Stop watching them. They have zero input or value into the discussion because they have zero understanding of how Pokemon Unite works. That attack speed buff on its own was not enough to make Garchomp OP if Garchomp was bad before. The secret is, Garchomp's always been really strong. Now, maybe only the players that played in the beta understand this, because even though Garchomp is strongly nerfed from the beta, if you just play it like beta Garchomp and you're Chad, you have to be a Garchamp, not a Garchomp. Even Gibble's laning is strong. If Gibble is just auto-attacking someone, he wins that duel. He just wins that fight. So you have to enable your Gibble when you're laning with people, but allies suck, and most people in this game suck, and they don't know how to play around Gibble or teammates or anything like that. So yeah, it's like, it's hard to make work, but a good Garchomp has always been A tier at the worst, and A+ tier just like as the safe bet. Like, yo, Garchomp's always been A+ tier. Now people are finally realizing it off of a very, very minor buff. So anyone that is just now pretending that this is what made Garchomp good, they have no idea how the game works, and they're just following popular opinion because they don't have any game sense or thoughts of their own, which is why you shouldn't follow them anymore. Trash. And that brings us to S tier, where there's only 3 options. Crustal's still S tier because nothing happened to it. Cinderace is still S tier because nothing happened to it. And Zeraora is still S tier because nothing happened to it. So, Zeraora, best character in the game right now. Cinderace is ridiculous. Once it hits that like level 9 power spike, it's absurd. Also, its level 7 is still really strong. Secures Zapdos, Drednaw, crazy objectives. Yeah, it's just a wacky Pokemon. It's a Giga ADC, you know, it's a hyper carry, 80 carry. If you're familiar of like 80 carry metas in League of Legends, that's where Cinderace lives right now. So it can just take over games and take over fights. You need to KO it at all costs, and it's very slippery, so that's hard to do. Hard to shut down as well because it just hurts. It just hurts too much. Zeraora, there's no counterplay to that Pokemon. It's stupid. And Crustal, if you're running Stealth Rocks, you're trolling. If you're running Score Shield, you're trolling. Goal Getter, trolling. If you're not helping out fights, you're trolling. Like, what you need to do, Shell Smash, run through the enemy team, X's of them into yours, nothing they can do about it. Crustal can also win fights like 1v2 like that, and if it has its Unite move, it wins 1v4s. Play that. Play Chad Crustal, and then you're fine. You kind of drop off in the late game, like there's this weird level 12 power trough, where it's like you're not 1v2ing and 1v3ing anymore, but then you just open up the opportunities for your team, you know? Use your Unite move to prevent Zapdos from getting stolen. Use X-Scissor to bully out anyone that's trying to steal Zapdos, and then you just kind of win it from there. Also, X-Scissor crits. If you're not running Scopelins on Crustal, you are 100% trolling and losing games for absolutely no reason. So that's the tier list, guys. I thought Greedent was going to be ridiculous, but once you actually get into an active, dynamic game of Pokemon Unite, it just flops. It just doesn't do anything. Yeah, apparently you need everything just standing still to let you belch on them 3 times while they're not stealing berries and not dodging belch or anything, and that just doesn't happen, and it's very tricky to get all that stuff to work. So Greedent, very clunky. Maybe the clunkiest character, the most complex character, can definitely pop off, can definitely do some weird stuff. Maybe that makes it B-, maybe that makes it C+, maybe that makes it B tier, because the Unite move into Zapdos secures. There's just so many other better Pokemon that provide so much more at any stage of the game that Greedent, not really much of a case for it right now. Maybe it's bugged, I don't know. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.